analyzing 5,000 houses in 18 days.
Wow.
We would drive every house, do a title search on every house, comp every house. I had it down where we had 1.4 minutes to analyze houses. Wow. I'm like, can you do this again? He's like, yeah, I just need money. I just need money and lots. I'm like, my name is George Roddy.
You are now listening to the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast.
You see this guy here staring back at you? That's your toughest opponent. Every time you get into the ring, that's who you're going against. I believe that in boxing, and I do believe that in life.
Your weekly deep dive into DFW real estate, life, and beyond. With your hosts, Tavis Westbrook and Ashton Hines.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast. And in the last several weeks, this has been the Real Estate Heavyweights University, where we've taken a deep dive into the world of flipping. And we wrapped that up last week. If you have any interest in flipping, please go back. I think we did about 6 episodes there. And we really try to look at it piece by piece and try to walk you through that process. We're going to double back at some point and go deeper on some of those topics. But one of our main goals with this podcast is to bring you people that are experts in our industry who have, gone this path for years and years. And we are starting that off today. So we're about to bring you an awesome interview with our friend George, Tavis's friend, George, that he's known for a long, long time. So I'm Ashton Hines, one half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. I'm the newbie here. I will sit back and just try to take notes. Tavis, he is my mentor, my guy that I've bought a couple properties from. He's walking me through a flip. He's done over 200 flips. So let's say hey to Tavis. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Good morning. I'm excited about this interview.
Man, me too. You kind of line this up. And without further ado, why don't we bring in our guest? And George, why don't you just give us a little bit of an intro, take us into your life about, I know you said you got started way back in 1975. So take us back and tell us where you got started and how you got here today. So, I mean, I'm taking notes. I'll let you run with it and you give us some details and we're definitely going to pick your brain along the way. So how are you doing today?
I'm good, Ashton. Hey, it's a pleasure to be on the Heavyweights. Wow, I'm honored. Yeah, 75, I've made some notes because, I was nervous about doing this, but I'll try to get through it. Yeah. Kind of grew up in, dad and mom moved us out to the country, which was called Anna, Texas, back in 1975. Population of 500. It's grown a little bit since then. Wow. So I lived out there till 85 and came back to Plano and have kind of been in Plano in the DFW, kind of the Frisco area ever since. What else? Anyway, I kind of got started in real estate in 93. I was lucky. You mentioned the word mentor. My father owned a real estate data research company here in Dallas. So he was big in data. All right. And it had to do with real estate as well. So we would track all the commercial sales in Dallas-Fort Worth. If Trammell Crow bought a piece of land or somebody bought an apartment building, we would find that out and then call the principals and try to get more information if it was land, etc. And every month we put out a report called the Roddy Report. And so brokers, appraisers, things of that nature, before there was the online, all this data was online, there was a paper version of what's going on in DFW. So I cut my teeth being a data researcher, going down and collecting information, adding information to it, and selling that information to our clients. And then my father also bought a company in the mid 80s called Foreclosure Listing Service. And it was run by 2 sisters out of their house. He bought it from them, and we would collect what is posted for foreclosure each and every month. And then we would go to the auctions and track the sales. Just because a property is posted for foreclosure doesn't mean it's going to be auctioned off, right? So we would track which ones would actually go to the auction. What was the opening bid? What was the closing bid? And sell that information. So that's kind of, how I got in the business, which I did not want to work for my father. I mean, that was not what I aspired to be. But after going to Texas Tech in '89 and then them not asking me back the next year, it limited I don't know why, I mean, a .002 GPA and you're not going to ask me back.
Come
So
on.
I didn't start off great with the education. I wasn't the best student in the typical classroom, I guess. And so Dad basically told me, you got some choices. There's the armed forces. I think he'd be a great used car salesman, George, and or you could come work for me. So I decided. I took about a week. All right, I didn't, and decided to start working for him. And he said it's going to be tough. You're going to be in the basement, so to speak, and you're going to work your way up. So I expect you here at 7 a.m. and you'll probably leave at 7 p.m. And I pay from 8 to 5 though. Yeah, I didn't know that. So, he was my mentor. The more I got into it, the more I learned from him, and he knew a lot of people, but essentially he kind of taught me. I was young. I want to focus on the money. I see all these people coming in, driving fancy cars, and I kind of wanted that. As a 20-year-old, I want that. And he just said, look, the money will come. One of the things that I learned is the money will come. What you need to do is learn the fundamentals first. And I'm not going to open up my Rolodex and open up a lot of doors until you can prove to me that you know the fundamentals backwards and forwards. He taught me, that the reason why he's been successful in the data business is because he's accurate. Accuracy on data, and that's what separated us. We weren't a big firm, but people came to us because we were accurate and we were reliable, right? And so whenever I'd say, Dad, no one's going to know that there's, that T isn't crossed and that I, he's like, no, it matters to me. And those little things is what I think separate successful people from those that are just getting by. So
the details.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up in a family business too. I after college, I installed blinds and shutters for my family in Austin, and actually started that business up in Denver. So I know the dynamics of working with mom and dad, and it's really cool in a lot of ways. And then sometimes it's like I kind of wish we could turn this off every once in a while, and. Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I mean, I want to touch back on that at some point. Of I do think that one of the biggest differences now for what you're talking about is, the internet has really allowed people to fast track knowledge, and you don't have to grind as much to gain certain knowledge, but there's value in the grind. And back when you were starting, it sounds like, you had to do it because the internet wasn't there. You were having to show up on the steps and all that. And now information is so easy that I think sometimes people see the results and they try to click enough buttons to make it work out. And it's really, really hard to replace that work ethic and that grind. So that's super impressive. And I can see the result from that. So,
yeah. So George, so obviously, I mean, I've known, great things from you and your history with your dad. Your mom was in real estate as well, right? So I think you ended up starting out. When did you get your license and join Keller Williams back in the day?
Got my license in '98. So I started working for Dad. My mom was a traditional real estate agent. They separated, got divorced in '85. She went to Arlington, Virginia. Then a couple years later, came down to Houston. So she got her license, and she was the prototypical, realtor. I mean, and And she was the extrovert. My dad was more introverted, but she was bubbly. I mean, she's out there. I mean, embarrassed me almost every time we went out to lunch because she would spill her business cards on at the restaurant and always networking with. I mean, I was like, Mom, please don't try to network with everyone. You know, the waitress, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, oh man, here we go. What are you doing? What's your, you know? She would try, and I love that though. I mean, now looking back, you know, I got some trades from her, but she told me, and I started buying houses, and I saw the need for, and certainly you don't need it, but I saw that if you're going to buy and sell multiple properties and a lot, maybe it makes sense to get your license. And, you know, guys, I was a data guy. So having access to MLS was key for me. I mean, I'm a night owl. You know, we talked about this, Tavis. You know, I don't go to bed till 2 a.m. I love data. I mean, last night I'm looking at MLS, crunching data, looking at, because I'm always looking for that next deal. So I wanted that data, and I didn't want to have to rely on someone else's schedule. So yeah, I was, and I went to Keller Williams. My mom was with Keller Williams down in Houston, and I wanted to learn how the traditional market worked. Even though every day in my mind, I'm an investor. You know, when I wake up, my dad was the entrepreneur, the investor. My mom was traditional, 6%er, you know, that type of realtor. And so I combined the two. I learned the traits I tried to look at successful realtors that are making six figures. What do they do? You know, and why recreate the wheel? You know, I'm not the smartest guy, but I'll just align and try to be a chameleon to people that are successful. And when they're doing something, I'm going to try to soak up as much as I can from them, and then I'll turn it into my own. That's what I've always done, is I learn as much as I can from someone, and then I put my tweak on it. I might go a little bit, you know, I might go a little bit different direction than they did, but yeah.
So let me ask you this, because that brings up a great point. And, you know, myself starting in traditional real estate and focusing on the investment side now since 2009. And actually, I think that's when you and my paths crossed, was about 2009 after, you know, the crisis that we had with, you know, the mortgage industry and everything. And Ashton is starting out in traditional real estate as well, kind of, you know, cutting his teeth, getting into this groove, getting out of his, you know, 9-to-5 job and kind of working this way full time. And then, you know, I'm exposed, obviously, I'm still part of Keller Williams DPR, and there's about 600 agents there. And there's been a big push lately, a lot of interest with people that are, you know, traditional real estate agents that are trying to focus and at least start with their own portfolio, but also kind of explore the investment world. So what would you say some of the biggest things that you learned that you were able to kind of take from the traditional world, or, you know, carry into the investment world, and still to this day, what do you think some of those big connectors are that help your business and what you do today?
I mean, I think that, you know, unfortunately, NAR and TAR, right, our boards, there's not a 401k.
Yep.
Right. So I just looked at it as, guys, you know, you are the gatekeepers of all this information and knowledge, but you need to turn sometimes that focus on you. And at the same time, I want you to represent clients. I want you to build their portfolio, but you have to also be diligent enough to not spend all your money, save some of it, and then you need to be your best client. And that's, you know, I would stand in front of people all the time and say, my number one client is me. You know, I'm not trying to be, I'm saying that as humbly as I can, because I love helping others. But if I'm not helping myself along this journey, I'm going to hurt I'm going to hurt others by not seeing internal. So I always say, look, you're your best client some days, maybe not every day, but some days you have to turn the focus on you and build your portfolio, because I didn't have a 401k. I didn't work for a big company, so I had to build my retirement, and I wanted to do that. Early on, I bought some penny stocks. Somebody called me up and I got stung, and I made some money in real estate, and I bought $10,000 in penny stocks, and a week later I look and it's all gone, and I'm like, I had no control over that. And my best friend, is with Wells Fargo Financial, right? And he's like, yeah, but you never really know how much you're worth until you sell it. I'm like, no, I want control. And so I learned early on that if some CEO gets caught and or does something wrong, boom, I wanted to control my own destiny. That's why I focus more on real estate than going stocks and bonds. And I know a lot of people that make a lot of money in stocks and all that. That wasn't early on I got stung, and I think I remembered that. And so I always wanted to control my own destiny and not let someone else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. To that point, give us a little bit of a background on, or a snapshot of what your portfolio was looking like and coming into the early 2000s, the 2008, 2009 era. Because when you talk about controlling your destiny, you look at the market now, and for me, I'm new. And so you can control the purchase and your rehab costs. And I struggle with some of that. But the market, trying to predict the market, what is it going to be like in 6 months or 3 months or a year? Right now, it's a little bit, there's a question mark for me, especially.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like multiply that by 10 back in 2008. So you can't control all that stuff. So what was your portfolio looking like going into that time? And how did you navigate that tumultuous era of real estate that so many people that was kind of like a real benchmark era for them?
Yeah, I was doing a lot more fix and flips instead of, I think I had maybe 10 rental properties, right, going into 2008 and 9. And I was doing a lot of fix and flips, and then the interest rates, and it all imploded, the ninja loans, and I kind of saw that. So I started backing off on holding a bunch, because I kind of, looking at foreclosures, that data, that trend was going up. And once I started, it's usually 6 months after, right? But I saw it going up, and I'm like, it's about to pop. And just how people were getting qualified for loans, I was like, this is not sustainable. So, and my dad, and looking at all this data, so I kind of held off on holding a lot more, because I was like, I feel like I didn't know it was going to be that bad, but I felt like something was going to pop in usually every 15 years. I mean, it had been 80, 83, 85 is kind of when the last one. And then, so I knew eventually it's going to happen, and that's when values are going to go down. So I had 10 properties, and then I met somebody that was putting some money together, and I said, hey, why don't we buy some properties, fix them up? And that's when I aligned with Tavis, and he started helping with acquisitions, and then it turned into full renovation, GC, and pretty much, he was doing everything. And then I was like, hey, he's like, anyway, Tavis is so great. And we talk about talented people, or I haven't talked about it, but I love working with talented people. And so I could see that. And he was like, eventually he's like, George, I'm going to go this way, because I'm pretty much doing everything, besides the money, and I can find the money. So in the nicest way, he said that to me. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, but bottom line is, the one thing I didn't, here's what surprised me. I had kind of built up relationships with banks and credit is a big thing, right? And so I didn't see that I had probably $2 million in lines that I was preparing to buy, right? Once this thing hits, that's when you buy and you hold. And what I didn't see is all of those banks, it basically that 2 million went down to 200,000. And I was like, what? I mean, I had money in the bank, but I was preparing to buy. And because the banks tightened up, they did not like the word real estate in 2008, 9, 10, 11. So all of my lines went to, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm walking in. I'm like, what did I do? And he's like, it's not you. It's just, we're not doing these type of loans. We don't want to be in this. We got to let this settle out. And we got auditors coming in. So that threw me for a loop because I had started preparing 5 years before to be prepared to be liquid enough to then accumulate. In my mind, I wanted to accumulate $2 million worth of, or, spend $2 million to try to buy, $5 million worth of product and then ride this wave back up. So that was the one thing that I didn't see coming, and I had to pivot. And I was able to, yeah.
I was going to say that's a great lead in to kind of like your journey, and as we're talking here, because we've known each other a long time, but it's funny having this like flashback moment of just our journey in the business. And in 2009, and like you said, the bank stopped lending, right? So that was like a shift in my business, and it was like, okay, but the REO market started picking up, right? So REO is real estate owned property that was foreclosed. The bank owns it now, and now it was on MLS. So that's how I was finding deals. But George, obviously your background was actually buying at the courthouse steps and finding opportunities then. And so I think it was around 2010, leading into 2011, when you and I were doing a lot of deals together. I was doing some stuff with portfolio and other investors, and then you had stuff. And like you said, I think our paths kind of crossed from the design side, and then it just led into a bigger necessity. And I think, I had trades lined up and we were able to do the stuff quick, and you were like, oh, this is great. And
Oh yeah.
So anyways, I learned a lot. I mean, we did a lot of stuff. I think together, I think one of those years, I think you and I probably touched on like 26 properties or something together in a year. So, that's quite a bit, and these were fix and flips, right? These weren't just wholesale deals. So, we were touching and renovating every property and selling them. But one of the coolest things, and after that, you and I kind of separated for a little while, talked, but we didn't really know what was going on. And I think it was probably around 2014, 15 when I was getting into bigger projects and doing some tear down, rebuild stuff. And then that's kind of when our paths circled back. But from the interim of like 2012 to like 2014, 15, I think that's when you were working for one of those big hedge funds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you want to touch a little bit on that? Probably some of the things you learned. And I know my biggest regret in this business is not holding more property or not keeping more throughout the years. And I would say, without you saying it, that's probably one of yours as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think not Wayne Hughes, that's the owner, but Warren Buffett, I think Warren Buffett came out and said, if I was younger, I would buy every piece of real estate I could, and I'd hold it. This was in 2012. And 5 months later, a guy, called me up and said, hey, I bought your dad's list, and your dad said you do some consulting. I've got $10 million. I'm going to the auction tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. I mean, there's people with money. And so that didn't, 10 million, 100 million, 1 million. You need to know the fundamentals, and he didn't. Now, he was an investor from Arizona, originally from LA, but this is the day before the auction. He calls me, and so I said, all right, have you done a title search? You're going to the auction, and no, I haven't. I'm like, yeah, you're going to lose money. I mean, it's, you're going to buy some but let me ask you a question. If there's a $150,000 house, what would you pay for it tomorrow? You haven't seen it. All you know that it's about, and he's like, what will it rent for? I mean, that was it, because I didn't know him from Adam. He's like, I said, let's say it rents for $1,400. He's like, I'd probably pay $135. I'm like, wait a minute. It rents for $1,400. You would pay $135,000 sight unseen, and you know this house has problems. I mean, it's going to need, cosmetically, even if it was built in 2000, it's going to need renovations. You're going to spend $10,000-15,000. He's like, yeah. I'm like, where are you? Where are you right now? You've got how much money? And so literally I met him at a barbecue place off the tollway 14 minutes later, because he was on the tollway. I said, meet me at Rudy's Barbecue in Frisco. And he told me, hey, this is who I work for. I work for the owner of Public Storage. And I got $10 million to spend. I said, well, I can't help you. And he's like, we're coming to Texas. And so I said, well, I'm your guy. Here's what I won't do. I'm not going to go to the auctions. I will not go to any auctions in DFW because we put out this data. And my dad always told me, look, I don't mind if you buy at the auction, George. I don't want you to ever be bidding against one of our clients. We put out the data, and again, it's a free market. I'm like, Dad, I know how to do this. I want to take in. He's like, just have someone else bid. Don't put it in someone's face. So he's like, I'm looking for someone to head up Texas. I'm like, I'm your guy. And so he hired me right there. He's like, hey, I said, I'm not so interested in the base. I'm not I've never really worked I'm not a corporate guy. I just let me do my thing. I will build this thing. I will make this thing run. And you got to trust me a little bit. I know Texas. I know how this works, the foreclosure. And so he took a chance, and we kind of settled it on, here's a small base, but you get X amount for every house we buy. So I was with the company 33 months. The company built a proprietary analytics system, brought in a programmer that I knew, and they probably spent $1 million to that guy, gave him $1 million for his programming that I brought in. And we had this thing. I got a PhD in analyzing 5,000 houses in 18 days.
Wow.
We would drive every house, do a title search on every house, comp every house. I literally had it down where we had 1.4 minutes to analyze houses.
Wow.
I had pictures, I had everything. Because we had to do this in Texas, and Texas is a Super Tuesday state, there's only one auction. So we brought in, I just built it from nothing. We built it from nothing and just started buying. The first month, we bought 72 houses on that one day. And over 33 months, we bought 3,186 houses.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. So I would be driving down to Houston because I'd go to Austin. I'd go to Houston to that because we didn't put out the data there. So I'd literally every Monday, the first Monday of every month, I would be driving in a rental car with between 50 and $75 million in cashier's checks. I mean, this thing was this thick, cashier's, because you have to pay with cash. And about half of that was in my name. And so I'm like, Mexico is literally, if I kept on going, they're in my name. I'm not, but no. Yeah, I never met it. I never made it to Mexico, but
so Josh, our producer, is tuned in with us today, and I'm just watching his facial expressions as George is going through this, and his eyes are just getting bigger and bigger as you're talking these numbers and these deals and how many things you're analyzing. So obviously, Ashton and I've talked about this before of You know, and you bring up an amazing point, right? Of one, knowing the knowledge, two, you know, tracking the data and getting your systems in place, right, to where you could do those analytics and pull the trigger, right? So I think that's a huge thing of knowing your buy box and really defining that and being able to make a decision in a quick time frame. I will touch on, I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from that journey that you were on, as well as many of your competitors in that world. And I know you had a good ride, you know, obviously, you know, making the money you were making as a consultant and running that and facilitating it. Again, we go back to some of the biggest lessons is not retaining more of that for yourself, as far as that inventory. But I know you and I talked about it. And back then you were saying, man, these guys are nuts. They're paying like 105% of ARV after rehab value at the courthouse steps, sight unseen. Now, mind you, they had perimeters and they had age built and they had figured out the data and they had figured out their buy box, right? And we thought they were nuts, right? And I mean, just you and I in the space, as elementary as we were, even with the 10 years experience we had at the time, and you more than that. But I think the takeaway was they saw that turn, right? They saw the turn on the market. So out of that inventory, how much do you think they kept, out of, I forget the number of how many houses you said there were, but over 3,000, or 30, how many did you say?
3183.
Yeah, 3183.
Yeah.
So 3,183 properties. How many did they sell, and what was their timeline on that, and what did they keep? Do you know?
I mean, I would say 95% they kept.
Wow.
I mean, only if 95%. Yeah. None of these were fix and flip.
Right. No, I know the goal. I know the goal. So part of that I was getting at is, I mean, I think you and I were talking about this in 2012, and their play was like a 5-year play, right? So I mind you, they might have kept it longer, but in some of these terms, we used to hear that, right? Their plan is to hold these properties for 5 years and then sell them, and obviously they got it right, you know, because we saw our biggest jump, I think, with any inventory we had at the time in 2012 to 2013. There was a huge uptick in the market just in that year span. That obviously we were excited for the little bit of inventory we had, where, I mean, properties were increasing by 50 grand and we were like, oh yeah, you know, we hit a home run. But if you had the patience, right, to hang on to that property, like you said, their play was get it rented and hold that inventory and carry it out. And like you said, even today, they may still own that inventory, right?
Yeah, I don't know, because I would if I had to guess, because they are still, I mean, they're publicly traded. When I was with them, they went public. You know, it was private, and then they brought in the the stock exchange people and everybody to rate them, and they went public probably a year before I left. So I would suspect that they probably have held 75%. They still hold 75%. I think they're the largest, and they started acquiring more after I left. They started acquiring other funds.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think BlackRock was a big, Invitation Homes was a big player in that field, but American Homes, I think they're the largest, rental hedge fund
portfolio.
They in the U.S.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I would suspect, I mean, just knowing I'd be surprised if they don't still hold 75% of what they held. And that was just in one market. I mean, they were in probably 17 markets at the same time. It was a spending spree.
Wow.
I mean, it was crazy, and it was fun. I mean, it really was, just to ride this wave. And here's the biggest thing. I saw that I was not going to be able to compete. So you either get out of the business, you try to compete, or you join them.
Right.
And so it was an easy how do I benefit? You know, what, you know, you got to take your pride off sometimes and just say, look, I'm not going to be able to compete with someone literally that, you know, I gave you an 85%, you know, LTV or of ARV. No, eventually they were at 110%. I mean, it was, they started tightening up and basically just buy, and especially in, which I agreed with. I did the same thing probably a year before, is when all of my lines went down to next to nothing, I said, I told myself I want to buy as much as I can, you know, when this market turns down, and I can't pay cash for them. So, you know, I was still able to acquire 49 properties in 1 year. And how I did that is I took over loans. So I learned the strategy of subject to. And I know subject to has a lot of negative connotation to it. But I was brought up in the data business. So I remember when there was NQA loans. NQA loans were non-qualifying assumable mortgages. VA had them, FHA had them. And anybody could assume that mortgage if this loan was originated up until a certain date. It was assumable and no one had to qualify. You could just assume this mortgage. I looked at that and said, I doubt, well, here's what I know. I've never seen a lender foreclose or call a loan when it's current. Let me say that again. When that loan is being paid every month, that lender is not going to ask questions. It's when the loan is in default that they start going, what are we going to do? So I looked at, I'm from Plano, right? And so I started saying, where are the greatest public school districts around here? That's where I'm buying. Whoever has an exemplary school rating, I'm going to buy as many houses as I can now in 2011 and 12. But I couldn't pay cash. So I said, I'm going to go to homeowners that are facing foreclosure. Before the auction, I can't do it. There's 3 ways to buy a foreclosure or quote unquote foreclosure: before the auction, at the auction, or after. After is an REO, but those are the 3 stages. And so I would go before the homeowner. I would bring that loan current. I would give that homeowner some walkaway money, and I would just take over their loan. And that's how I did it. I didn't take out one loan to get 49 houses.
And then the rents,
awesome.
as long as the rents were covering their mortgage, you could just net zero and be okay with it, hold it for appreciation, or?
I would say half of them, I was renting it for less.
Wow.
I was renting it for less than the mortgage, but here's what I was banking on my data, the data, and again, some of this is speculation, but I said, which houses are going to rebound the quickest? It's in good school districts.
Yeah.
So I identified good school districts and said, look, I'm taking over mortgage that's $1,600 and I might only rent it out for $1,400. I'm losing money every month, but that $200, I'm going to get it back when this thing rebounds.
That's $2,400 a year plus whatever you paid for walkaway money. So when you look at that for the asset and the appreciation gain and the principal reduction game, you know, it's a no-brainer, right? You're still your ROI is still, you know, double digits at that point, right? Especially with the appreciation point.
I did want to ask about, so fast forward from, 2012, 2014, you're accumulating projects. I know now, just from what Tavis has told me, and randomly, I dropped off some cabinet doors to a painter that was painting a house in one of the neighborhoods you're putting up. So I had no idea of the connection at the time, but he said, hey, this is where I am.
Wow.
I brought the cabinet doors over to him there, and evidently he was on one of your projects. So I know that you are doing new build, you're doing some neighborhoods. And so tell me how you got there. And honestly, I'm really interested I'm getting started. And I think a lot of people are on the front end of investing. And like we talked about, there's a lot of real estate agents out there that are interested and they're kind of on the sidelines and how do I get started and where do I go? So knowing all that you know, I mean, you've seen so many little facets of this industry. You are a data junkie. Where would you advise someone getting started today? Would you start, buying raw land and trying to do a new build? Or do you say, let's find a nice little easy fix and flip that's a median price for the area? Like, how would you advise that? And so touch on where you are now and just kind of tell, what would you talk to someone who's getting started on where they would go with their day and their money?
Yeah, I always start off with my recommendation is learn your fundamentals. If you, to me, it's all about valuating. So I try to keep an open mind. I mean, if there's a fix and flip that comes across, I'm more leaning towards raw land than I am, but I at least can know how to monetize that lead. Right? It's all about monetizing a lead, but I always tell people focus on the fundamentals, and then you won't hesitate. That's the one thing that I can say is that separated me from maybe a lot of other people is I don't hesitate. My father taught me you should be able to see a house and close on it in 48 hours. That's how I want you to be. And it seems unrealistic, but I bought a lot of houses at the auction and there's no title policy. So I was brought up not being where you have to close with a title company. And I love title companies and I think title insurance is a great thing. But I was taught and I was brought up with, you should be able to analyze and pull the trigger and close and not have to rely on a title company to draw up papers. No, you should know what is needed to control and own that asset. And you should be able to do it yourself. So fundamentals to me, I think it comes down to four fundamentals. Number one is, and I like acronyms, Ashton. So number one is ARV. How do you come up with the ARV? You need MLS data. So if you don't have that data, Zillow is that's not MLS data, right? The Redfin or whatever. No. You need accurate data. What number two is ERC, estimated repair cost. What's it going to take to repair this property? Is it 50,000? It's at 40. I'm looking at the comps to tell me what my competition is doing, right? And Tavis knows this. I like to over rehab. I mean, I want to be the best because I want it to be a no doubter. There's a house for 500,000 and there's a house for 500,000. Mine's going to be tricked out more. I'm just telling you, I will make less money on every deal, but I won't own that house for very long. So I'm the, on a baseball analogy, I can't think of his name. He was Baltimore Orioles, a long time player for them. He was the third baseman or shortstop. Cal Ripken. I'm the Cal Ripken of real estate. Cal Ripken got on base every game. Right? He swung for singles and doubles. He didn't swing for home runs. And that maybe I'm not as wealthy as I should be. I'm okay with who I am, but I was on base and then I'd steal and I would help the team. And so I'm always swinging for singles and doubles. And eventually you're going to hit some home runs. When you take that swing, a smooth swing, you are going to hit some home runs, but I'm always on base. And I always look at it as I might leave a little bit on table, and but I don't want to own. I got burned. I got burned in 2008 and 9, where I had a bunch of houses, and that taught me, hey, there's a chance that you could get burned, and it wasn't bad where it bankrupted me, but it hurt my pocket, and so. Number one is if you know what the value is, if you know the repairs, be good at estimating repair costs, which takes years, Tavis, right? I mean, this is not something that should be taken lightly. And then what's your MAO, your maximum allowable offer? I had a quick, spreadsheet that put me, okay, if I can sell it for this, if the rehab's this, it's going to take me this long. This is what I can pay. And so I know that. And then how do I control it? Like, when I wouldn't leave the house, I would literally go in my car and write the offer right then and say, here's my offer. Oh, by the way, if you want to close tomorrow, we can do that too. Like, I was prepared. I didn't hesitate. And so, but that takes reps. That takes a lot of reps, and no one wants to do the reps, right? The grind. No one wants that anymore. My son is 21. He's like, I'm going to be the CEO. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, you got to pick up a broom before you're going to own the restaurant. No, I'm like, hey, go for it, man. Go. I'd love to see it. And again, I'm old school. I think there's, that grind, like you mentioned, Ashton, there's something to that. You get that thick skin, but that, in controlling, writing the offer, I think a lot of people, so those are the 4 things that I look for. If you can master those, that's what I would tell realtors. Back in 01, I got my license in 98. In 01, I started taking some continuing education courses, right? And they were the most boring courses, Josh, I'd ever taken. These are mandatory continuing. I said, what am I doing all day here? I'm like, forget this. So I called the Texas Real Estate Commission. I said, hey, can I, I've got 4 subjects I'd love to teach realtors about. They're like, yeah. So I wrote 4 classes, got them approved, and I went around Texas teaching realtors. And I would my first question about investing, and foreclosures, short sales, tax sales, just the different leads that are out there. And my first question, usually in front of a group, I'm at the Metro Tex, and these are people paying normally MCE. I would charge $100 for a 3-hour MCE course, which was a lot. Now you could probably do it for $9, right? But I would have 100 people in this course, in this classroom, and I'm like, hey, raise your hand. How many investors do we have here today? And, investors would come. They're not realtors. They'd come to the class. I'd get 10 people raise their hand. I'm like, that's the problem, guys. Realtors, you don't think of yourself as an investor, and you've got everything going for you, and it's a mindset. Y'all are all investors. Let's go. Let's start investing ourselves. All right. I want you to help your clients, but I want you to help yourself. So with all that being said, let me answer your question, Ashton and Tavis. In 2015, I was working on a big rehab, $150,000 rehab, just tearing it all up, adding square footage. I met a guy next door. He was the GC for that fix and flip next door. His name was Daniel. He came over. He's like, hey, we started talking. We just, neighborly, and 2 guys doing the same thing. And I could see kind of like the word talent. I could tell this guy walked through and said, hey, have you thought about doing this? I'm like, I just met you. Like, you're giving me all these, but the guy was so humble. He was doing it in the most kindest way. And I'm like, and then I went and saw, he actually did, he had one of his companies was refinishing or laying hardwoods. And he's like, hey, I can do all this, and here's the price. It's a great price. And I said, well, let me look at your finished product. And he's like, he showed me 3 projects he was working for that were 10 minutes away. I'm like, done. We kept on working. More and more, we started doing stuff together. He came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about, there's a lot that I bought. Tornado knocked down the house. The slab is still there. I'm going to build. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I want you to write down this address, 1609 Nueces, 1609 Nueces, Nueces Drive in Garland. Google that. So basically, I went there and I looked at this lot, and just in a 1980s Fox and Jacob Syntex kind of neighborhood, right? And so he's like, I got a plan, and I said, man, I like it. I just didn't think anything of it. So a month later, he calls me and basically I said, hey, I need to give you some money, because he was working for one of my rehabs, doing some stuff. He's like, hey, can I take you to lunch? I want to show you what I'm doing, at this house. You remember that new? Oh, yeah. So I went over there, and this house was done. He had built this house. Now the foundation was there, right? He was using the existing foundation. He had built this Austin stone looters. What stone is that? Have you pulled it up?
No,
Tavis?
I didn't pull it up. But
Okay.
I know we
This
looked
thing
it up
was
before.
beautiful. Oh my God. I mean, I was like, what the heck? I'm like, dude, I looked at my calendar and it was 27 days.
Wow.
He built this. I'm like, I said, what? I said, how did you do this? He's like, well, I mean, we work 6 days a week. I mean, I had this guy. I'm like, can you do this again? He's like, yeah, I just need money. I just need money and lots. I'm like, my name is George Roddy. How you doing? Let me reintroduce yourself. I said, hey, I'll find the lots. I'll find the money. I'll do everything. You just do this, bro. You do this, and we're golden.
Yeah.
And so I partnered with that. I hadn't bought another fix and flip since. That was 2000. That was September 2016 when I saw that house. I was done. Wow. I was like, if we can do this, if you can build houses in 30 days, and this house was inside, I'm like, look, I've been around a lot of houses, and I'm like, man. So that's when I started. That was my journey. Number one, I did it because everybody started becoming a fix and flipper, right? Chip and Joanne, right? Fixer upper. Everybody's a fixer upper. Oh no, I'm a fixer. I'm like, here's what I don't want. When everybody's doing something, I'm out.
Yeah. So
that's number one. And so I knew it was harder for someone to go from ground to roof. You're asking Ashton, hey,
you got a different sandbox.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I always look for when everybody's a builder now, I'm out. Right. As soon as that happens, and that's why I want to go commercial. I'm looking at the next thing but it's harder for a newbie to go to build houses. They just don't have the infrastructure and all of the good trades. Can they do it? Yeah. But it's harder. You can get a GC. And so that's why I went that direction. It's competition. I looked at it as I can't compete with people who don't know what they're doing and overspending, overbidding properties, either on MLS or at the auction. But land, usually there's not as many competitors on dirt. And so I just went, where's the least competition? I don't mind competition, but I can't fix someone that doesn't know that they're making a mistake over and over and make a living. So I had to go in a different genre.
That's awesome. So George, wrapping that up and just knowing, what does your goals look like for 2024 and the next? I mean, where do you see your business going in the next 5 years? What have you thought about?
Yeah, I've always kind of stayed in the market of if the market tanks, I don't want to be holding a bunch of high end speculative. I'd rather make less money, so I'm kind of a little bit conservative on this side. So I just think that I started with a 3.2, 4.2, buying cheap dirt. And it's hard right now. I mean, everybody, it's just difficult. I'm having to go a little bit farther out and look at that next Anna, look at the next, Roy City or Rockwall, or where is this next? Is it south? Is it north? And that's where I'm going. I bought some land in Wilmer, south of Dallas, 3 lots a couple years ago, just sat on it and, built 3 houses there. I mean, I'm looking outside and buying cheap dirt. You make your money on the buy side.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. Now, sometimes you get lucky if you hold it long enough, right? It appreciates, but I'm in essence a fix and flipper. I'm just doing it on a new product. So, my partner wants to go. We're doing a higher end project in Preston Hollow, and he likes that big payday, right? Which is great until the market turns.
Right.
So I'm more about singles and doubles. Look, let's build these 18 to 2,000 square foot houses, because if the market ever goes bad, we'll rent them out, right? I mean, we're not going to have a problem renting these out. So if they don't sell, let's rent them. I've always been the 5-to-1 ratio. Every 5th house I keep, right, that we build, let's make our money on the 4, and on the 5th one we keep. If we're doing, because I like to stay in that 15 to 2,000 square foot home. So that's what I'm doing. Would I like to get into more commercial? Yes. I want to find somebody that, I want to find some land where I can do some commercial, more multifamily. I did a townhome project which you helped me out on, Tavis and Louisville, a small one, 6 units, but I like multifamily. I want to own, some small multifamily projects. I just like that. I know there's a lot of it. A lot of apartments coming out, that are being built right now. I think there's oversaturation of that. Even though a lot of people are coming here, there's just way too many doors. And I feel like that market's going to get affected pretty deep. But we'll see. They keep on building it. And so that's what I'm looking forward to for 2024 is stay small. I mean, don't get outside the lines as far as the product that you're offering. I'm not going to do a lot of high end specs. I'm just looking for cheap dirt that I have to go a little bit farther away. But I've already proven that I've bought lots in bad areas. People will still buy in quote unquote not exemplary school districts, right? If you put a new product, people love new.
Yep.
And so that's how we started off is I just bought lots from the cities, for pennies on the dollar and in, semi-rough neighborhoods. And I put a new product up and boom. Hey, those people like to be in that neighborhood. They just want to move into a new product and they'll pay. So I like that. I've done that before. It's a proven model for me. I'm going to sprinkle in some multifamily. Most likely, I've got a development that we're working on in Royce City, a 30-acre development that I've got to get going, and we're working on that. But other than that, I think stay small. The Cal Ripken. I'm just going to continue being Cal Ripken.
I love it. So George, I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had from this that I've heard you say over and over throughout your journey has been exit strategy, and I would say that, myself, that's something that I'm always looking at, right? Is having multiple exit strategies and anything that I invest in. So glad to hear you say that as well. And just where you're going, like you said, it's if you end up with some inventory at the price points you have and the builds, you can always rent it, right? So that's just having that backup plan if the first plan doesn't work out. So
if the market doesn't agree with you, right? The market's never wrong. It just disagrees with you.
There you go. So George, how can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, go to right now Rosso ROSO homes.com. That's our brand for our company. RO is for Roddy, SO is for Soto, my partner. So I just combined them and created Rosso. And yeah, check us out. We're a small builder. we love representing or building for clients, and we love building for ourselves. And so, if you want to touch base or you have questions, I always tell people, I read a book, Never Eat Lunch Alone. So I tell everybody, guys, look at me. I eat lunch every day. So from noon to 1, if you want to buy me lunch, you get an hour. You get an hour. Now, if you don't mind me talking and eating, there might be some nuggets you can get from me. So I tell people, hey, I took out a lot of people for lunch when I grew up, and I still do. I love taking people to lunch because that one nugget. And with people in Ashton, I don't know you. I know Tavis. Look, I'm just telling you guys, Tavis is the real deal. This guy, he's got so much knowledge, and no offense to anyone, but I love talented people. And Tavis, Ashton, if you don't, you know it already, but this guy is the real deal. And so I can't say enough about, Tavis. Here's what I like. I like people that are humble, but are talented. And I know I've been talking me. I try to stay humble. The biggest thing for me, and I know we need to wrap up, is I don't mind going in a different direction than everybody else, but it's naive of me, like the lone wolf mentality. I kind of have that lone wolf mentality, but here's what I learned is never think that you're going to do it alone. If you think you're going to be successful doing it by yourself, you're crazy. You got to have talented people to help you along the journey. You just align with talented people. It's okay to ask questions, and go a different direction, but have talented people that you can align with and bounce ideas off of, and that you trust, and that are not looking, what can I gain from you, but rather, what can we build together?
Well, if eating lunch and being around Tavis is the key to success, then I am well on my way, because I don't miss any meals, and I'm spending plenty of time with him. So
those are my two keys to success.
I will definitely be retiring.
Hence the name of our podcast.
No, I mean,
right?
Tavis is the real estate heavyweights. It's not because either of us are prize fighters. That is for sure.
Oh, man.
Well, George, man, it's been awesome hearing you talk. I could seriously sit here for a long, long time to hear you. Thank you guys for joining in. This is one of our first of hopefully a bunch of interviews we're going to bring. George, you set the bar really high. I mean, I don't know, we're going to have to really start searching for some super high quality people to bring on here, because you had some awesome stories and set the bar super, super high. You did awesome. So I hope everybody enjoyed it.
You're gonna probably scrap half of what I said. It's fine. No, I'm good. Yeah.
No,
I think we're gonna have to keep this at an hour. Just people are just gonna have to listen on the two-way trip instead of just their one-way trip. So.
Yep. If Joe Rogan can get away with 3, we can get away with 1 every once in a while. So. Yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. We will definitely be coming to you again with another interview. We'll be coming to you with our market analysis episode, where we do a little bit of a lighter take on the market, the news, and a few tips and tricks about the real estate industry. We come to you with that once a week. So if you have not done it yet, please subscribe, please like, definitely share it with a friend. After you hear this episode, I know you're going to want to send this to as many people as you can that want to learn about investing. And George, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best, and we will see all of you guys next time.
All right, see ya.